RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD. BlenderHD, you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Wednesday, January 15th. We'll be taking a first look at this weekend's Divisional round 4-game slate on DraftKings. So hit that thumbs up button on your way in the door. Give me those thummy thumbs. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to always know when I go live. Join with me, the guy that's on almost every show, either on camera or behind the camera. Seemingly in January, it's TJ Zwarch, who, let's see, here today, let's see, in Louisville right now, I always have to ask because it seems like the past couple of weeks, you're all the way up in Canada. I always make fun that it's like negative 74 degrees up there. It is 12 degrees Fahrenheit currently here in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm assuming it's warmer there.
Yeah, kicking your butt. It's 33 right now here in Saskatoon. The other night it rained. There's like multiple feet of snow here, like on the side of roads and things like that. And it rained the other night.
Which is odd because this time of year it would just be snowing.
Snow, yeah.
And here, if it rained, it would be snowing instead. And we still have snow from last week on the roads. So hopefully it'll warm up the next 2 days. I think the ice will melt tomorrow. It'll turn here. It's going to go into like the high 30s, low 40s. And then by next week, it'll be back down to like 11 degrees.
Yeah, that's actually, weirdly enough, that's been our whole winter so far too. Like we haven't actually had that terrible of a time. I think there's only been like a couple of weeks that it's been in the negatives.
Well, one thing that will heat us up over the weekend is that we got 4 playoff games. The football season's almost coming to an end. We got 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. DraftKings, fortunately, I like them doing, the main slate, the featured slate is all 4 games combined. Of course, we got showdowns. We got these 2-game slates. But we'll primarily be talking about the full 4-game slate. And we got 2 games that have 50-plus totals on the board. I mean, we got the Baltimore-Buffalo, 51.5 total. We got Washington-Detroit. That's a 55.5 total. And then we got KC-Houston and Philadelphia-Los Angeles. That doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to be playing guys out of those games that are slightly lower totals, as you'll see here in our initial projections. But starting out at quarterback, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard not to like. The thing about this slate on DraftKings is that the pricing is a little soft. It's not like soft, but they've muted some of the prices. Like you can fit people in. You're probably gonna have to play some 3K, 4K level player, but I would think that I want to pay up at quarterback. I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes there at 6K. He's a favorite with a 25-point total, but especially this year, I don't necessarily equate him to like high point scoring games. The way the Chiefs offense works is that Patrick Mahomes probably will get 250 and 2. He'll probably get that. He'll probably something around there. But I prefer guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and especially Jaden Daniels at 7K at Detroit inside the dome. You have to figure with the Lions being a 8.5-point favorite that Daniels is going to have to run and throw the ball a lot.
He's going to have to run a little bit. He's got a great price tag. I do think with the Mahomes thing, we have to consider that maybe because it's the playoffs, now we see Mahomes go, all right, it's time. I do think that is within the realm of possibility. Now, the fact that he's projecting to be the second highest owned quarterback early in the week, if that stays through the weekend, maybe I wait to take that shot until a little later in the playoffs. But as it stands right now, like Jaden Daniels definitely looking like the best guy for that ownership. I agree. I'd probably want to go underweight on Mahomes. But with these prices, like I don't think if you're running like a few lineups, I don't think there's a single quarterback who is off the table just because the ones we don't really want to play are so stupidly cheap.
Right. Well, we're primarily talking on the Wednesday show. We're primarily talking about like top plays, cash lineups,
Yeah.
single entry contests. Friday we'll talk about
We'll talk
GPP
some Stroud on
and
Friday.
right. We'll stack up stuff. Right. But I'm just saying, like, if you're building a cash type lineup for your double ups,
it's gonna be Daniels.
right. I think Daniels, but I mean, Baltimore Buffalo, Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. Probably
Yeah.
the winner of this should be the MVP. Right? Probably should be Lamar. Whatever. Probably Josh Allen wins it. If I had the money from Jaden Dan, like I take a look at this. If I had the money, if I had $700 or $800,
I'm picking one of those guys for sure.
Feel more comfortable playing Allen or Jackson in this game with a 51.5 total than a quarterback from a team on the road playing as an 8.5 point or 9.5 point under.
For sure. Like the one thing with Detroit is like, they're going to be pushing the pace of this game regardless. They're going to be going for it on fourth. And so Washington's going to be having to keep up. And so this is the type of underdog scenario with a big spread that I do actually like because it means Daniels is going to have to be throwing the ball. I don't really think it's going to be a situation where it gets slowed down a ton with this massive total. 32.5 total for Detroit is wild. And so I do think that that's the type of underdog scenario we still like because he does still have a 23-point total still, which is very comparable to Baltimore and Buffalo's. But I agree with you. I think like for the point per dollar aspect of things, Jaden Daniels is the guy. But if I have $700 or $800, it's definitely Josh Allen or Lamar.
Right. All I'm saying is that as a heavy underdog on the road, there are at least more outcomes where Jaden Daniels only scores 9 points. Right, yes. Where the Lions just stomp the Commanders. While I think that Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, there are much more outcomes where you're at least getting 16, 17 points and not getting a total dud. I mean, obviously anything can happen in these games, but I'm not a big fan of playing underdog quarterbacks in my cash games, other than the fact that it's only a 4-game slate, so there's only so much to choose from. But you do make a point that Washington's implied team total is almost as high as KC and Philadelphia's anyway, and those two are favorites in their games. And it's almost as high as Baltimore and Buffalo. So, even if Jaden Daniels doesn't throw for 300, only throws 1 touchdown, but mixes in 50, 60 yards rushing, I mean, you're probably getting 15 points there regardless. I mean, his floor is probably high, buoyed by that the rushing floor that you almost just add a touchdown to your lineup regardless because he's going to rush for 40 plus yards anyway.
Yep. Same page there. Like I think Hurts doesn't really look like a guy who is going to rush with the same dangerousness as he has been in the past, but he still has that nice floor. The top 4 guys on this slate, it's tough to ignore the rushing ability in comparisons to the Goff, the Mahomes, the Stafford, the Stroud.
Let's go to running back. We have news this week that we'll need to pay attention to, or maybe not, or maybe we don't care. David Montgomery's in practice. They say David Montgomery is going to be ready. How much work do you think David Montgomery gets? He's 5,700. Jahmyr Gibbs is 7,700. We've been playing Gibbs with Montgomery out at, you practically could just not even look at the price and just play him regardless. Like, it didn't matter if he was 11K, you just play him anyway. Detroit is a 32.5 total. It's one of the highest totals of the entire, literally of the entire year for an implied team total. I feel like even if you told me, like, it's one of these situations on a 4-game slate. This is not a 10-game slate. It's not a regular season slate. That even if you told me that David Montgomery wasn't injured ever, and the Lions were just playing like they would normally play with both these running backs, I'd probably still play Jahmyr Gibbs at 7,700 anyway. So what is your take on how do you think that they're going to work Montgomery back in? Is it going to be back to the old Lions where, it's kind of half and half? With Montgomery getting a lot of the, the first and second down type of, goal line carry type of stuff, with Jahmyr Gibbs getting a lot more of the 2-minute offense, the third downs, and, kind of passing plays, although he does still get first and second down work and some goal line carries. Or do you think that it's going to be mostly Gibbs and Montgomery is just going to be kind of worked in?
So the way they've kind of done it all year is they just alternate drives, and when one of the guys out there, he's out there for all three. He's out there for the goal line, and then the other guy is out there for his full drive. And it's led to Gibbs this year getting more goal line carries. It's led to Montgomery getting more pass catches, because when it's their drive, they just stay out there unless they have a huge run and get really tired or get hurt, something like that. I think how it'll be this week is, if it's usually 50-50, it'll probably be closer to 60-40 Gibbs, 70-30 Gibbs. I do think Montgomery is still going to get his touches, but I think Gibbs is going to be the guy that they lean on. Montgomery, I think, probably gets a little bit more work. They try and work him back into things if this turns out into a blowout scenario. But I think in like a close, tight game, they're probably going to be relying on Jahmyr Gibbs in this spot. I do, however, think, I know we're still talking optimally, so I think he's the top option on the slate, but for 50+% projected ownership, and I even kind of think we're over projecting him a little bit right now.
So you think like GPP wise that most of the field is going to play him as if it's been Jahmyr Gibbs the past month.
Yeah, I don't think with Montgomery back, he's outscoring Derrick Henry three times as often as Derrick Henry outscores him, which is what the ownership projections have right now.
Well, we have the two higher priced running backs are Barkley and Henry. They're both in favored spots. Obviously, Eagles are a bigger favorite against the Rams. Our projections have Barkley with almost about a 4-point difference in mean projection. I'm not sure you're necessarily going to even be able to play Barkley and Gibbs together. You're going to have to basically sacrifice a high-priced wide receiver, and we'll get to that. Between the favored running backs, so we're talking. Okay, we already talked about Gibbs, but you have Barkley for the Eagles. You got Henry for the Ravens. You also got Cook, because technically that Baltimore Buffalo game is a 1.5-point game. So it's pick 'em. You got James Cook. And then you also have the KC running backs who are both cheap. But on the high end, I mean, our projections would say to play Barkley over Henry. Do you not? I mean, from a cash game perspective, are any of these guys better than the high-priced wide receivers? And then we'll talk about kind of the underdog running backs and the cheap stuff.
I wish the high-priced receivers were just more expensive, because they're certainly easy to get to, And so if I'm going the Jaden Daniels route or the Mahomes-Lamar route, it probably leads me to the receivers over the running backs. And to be fair, this is a really difficult slate, because James Cook looks like he ended up getting the pretty close to lead back role. I think I kind of want to avoid Kyron and Mixon against those defenses. But I probably want to try and get to at least 2 of Barkley, Henry, Gibbs in most of my lineups this week. I think even in a cash perspective, I would try and do it, because I think even though Nico, Puka, St. Brown, AJ Brown, McLaurin, they all look really good for their price tags, so do, Rashad Bateman, Zacchaeus, De'Ami Brown, John Mechie. And so I think I might like the expensive running back, cheap wide receiver route build better than the expensive wide receiver and figure out running back route.
Yeah, I disagree. I'm the other way.
That's what we did on Wednesday last week too, but you came around by Friday.
Well, so maybe for GPPs, but I think workload matters more for running back. That I think playing Kyron Williams at 6,900. Yeah, I know 18.75 implied team total. They're underdogs. He actually got 3 receptions the last game. He's like Cooper Kupp is dust. It's apparently doesn't even get targets anymore. I mean, we know that Kyren is basically going to be playing like every snap, right? And you could practically say the same for Mixon to some extent. Obviously, I put Kyren above Mixon, but like neither guy, like for cash game purposes, I think both are fine. Like I'm perfectly fine. I'd rather play a high price wide receiver and then fit in a Kyren Williams or Joe Mixon than pay for Barkley or Henry and then have to play another like 4K punt wide receiver. I just think that overall, from a floor perspective, your lineup is better. Although TJ, your approach would be much better for ceiling. So like if Kyren gets me 14 points, that's fine. If Mixon gets me, 12 to 14 points for double ups purposes, I think that's perfectly fine. Then risk playing, some 4K, a second 4K player that goes 2 for 24, and that's it. And then only get you 4.5 points.
I hear you for sure. The way I'm kind of looking at it is I just think there are only 3 running backs on the slate who have a chance at 30 plus points. And that is, while we're talking ceiling, I do think they're all pretty solidly going to get me 20 plus. I think we're under projecting Derrick Henry pretty significantly. And so I just kind of look at like, if I can lock in 60 points for my running backs, I think there's probably going to be 10, 15 receivers on this slate who score double digits.
How about the KC running back? How about Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco? I mean, they're both under 6K, right? We got guys like Ty Johnson, Justice Hill. Obviously, the Washington running backs. You got Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler. Like all these running backs are pretty cheap. Kenny Gainwell's there at 4,700. I don't know if you go any further down. Obviously got David Montgomery. We already talked about him. As far as cash lineups are concerned, are these options better than like the 5K level wide receivers? Because I don't think so. I think these are all take a shot in GPP type of guys, but nothing that I'd rely on in like the flex spot of my cash lineup on DraftKings.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think in tournaments, I like the third down backs best. Justice Hill, Ty Johnson, Austin Eckler, the guys who are going to be pass catching. Those are going to be my favorites for GPPs, but in cash, optimal type stuff, I agree with you.
Okay, let's go to wide receiver. I know the Rams are an underdog. They have an 18.75 implied team total, the 7th out of 8th on the slate. But from a volume perspective, being a game that they're probably going to be passing a lot more than running, I don't know. It's hard not to play Puka Nacua at 7,400. This is where it comes down to: would you rather get up to a Puka Nacua, a Nico Collins, and Amon-Ra St. Brown? And I prefer Puka above the other two. I would rate it Puka, then St. Brown, then Collins for me. But I just feel I could live with Kyren Williams in my lineup rather than have Saquon or Derrick Henry, because if I play the high priced running back, 2 of them, it's going to be very, very tough to play. You have to play one of these wide receivers and then like 2 like $3,600 guys. I'd rather just go slightly down at running back and then look at my wide receiver group and go, I feel comfortable with my with all of them. I look at my lineup and I go, okay, I'm pretty comfortable with all this. Puka has a prop right now, 7.5 receptions, 91.5 receiving yards, plus 145 anytime touchdown score. So his touchdown odds are a little bit lower than other receivers, obviously, because they're underdogs. But it's very rare that you get a 7.5, 91.5 prop on a $7,400 receiver. Typically, these are $8,500, $8,800 receivers. I'm playing Puka in my cash lineup because this could easily be, his floor is like 7 for 80 with no touchdown, and that's still 15 points. If he gets over 100 yards and scores a touchdown, I mean, he has an easy path to 25. And the Rams could lose like 35-7 in that instance. So I don't even know if it matters, like whether or not the Eagles win the game or anything. I just think Puka gets his stuff regardless.
Yeah, I agree. I think he probably gets there. I do still think from a raw point standpoint, I'd prefer Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs over Puka if I have to choose like the running back versus the receiver thing. But Puka Nacua at 7,400 would be my top receiver choice if he can get if I can get there. Absolutely. I do still really like the sub 6K range, and so that's a range I want to get to a lot, but the pricing is so soft where I would rank the top three: Puka 1, Collins 2, St. Brown 3. But even
Do you
McLaurin
put Nico Collins, TJ, do you put Nico Collins in the same conversation? A little bit less of a guy that's it's obviously the Texans are the biggest underdog with the lowest implied team total, but you have to figure that the Texans are going to be down anyway, and Nico Collins is essentially their only wide receiver now.
That's the thing. Like
Stroud, it's
every time they
Nico
went to him
Collins
last game,
has a floor of like 7 for 80, regardless of even if the Texans get blown out. That from a cash perspective, like he's actually pretty safe, even in that scenario.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I would. He's only $400 less than Henry, so again, I would rather the Henry Gibbs thing, but both Nacua and Collins are going to be priorities in lineups that I'm spending up at receiver over AJ Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown for me. McLaurin, I think, is going to look great in your Jaden Daniels teams, and Jameson Williams looks like a great tournament play because he's probably going to go low on because he's the one guy that feels overpriced while everybody else on the slate feels underpriced. But one of the reasons why I'm looking at the Derrick Henrys and the Jahmyr Gibbses and the Saquon Barkleys over these receivers is because I see Devonta Smith at 5.6K, Xavier Worthy at 5.2, even Shakir at 5 for a cash game setting. I don't think I'd like him in tournaments as much, but for a cash game setting, if Zay Flowers is going to be a little bit hampered, somebody like a Bateman, I just really like these cheaper receivers a lot too.
Yeah, but you could get multiple of these guys in. I mean, I think if you had to rank between Shakir, Worthy, Devonta Smith, I would that's and Cooper Kupp. Yeah, that would be a good. You put them all together for cash games. So for projection only, for not including ownership, not including ceiling, just a floor projection type of thing. How would you rank those four?
Smith 1, Shakir 2, Worthy 3, Kupp 4 by a lot.
The only difference between me is that I'd probably rank Shakir above Devonta Smith.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think Shakir has a slightly higher floor, but Devonta Smith does have a higher ceiling. So I could get, I could see the difference. And also, if you take a look here, even at props, like it's a very similar line. Like Shakir is has higher reception prop. So 4.5 at -150 versus 4.5 -120. Devonta Smith has a slightly higher yardage prop, 54.5 versus Shakir 51.5. But oddly enough, just based on totals, they both have a +185 anytime touchdown score, even though Shakir is not necessarily
aggressively incorrect. The books messed that one up.
Shakir doesn't get red zone targets, right?
Yeah, he doesn't get red zone targets, doesn't get end zone targets, whereas Devonta, he gets a lot.
So you would bet if both of them were +85, Devonta Smith heads up. If it was heads up, to touchdown or not, you would say Devonta Smith over Shakir regardless.
Yeah, big time. I think Devonta should be like +160, and I think Shakir should be like +240.
Any cheap receivers? Like I know these 5K receivers are probably too. Like it seems like the running backs are priced fairly, the quarterbacks seem to be priced fairly, and the wide receivers are just like mostly like a lot of them are like 500 to 700 underpriced, like just across the board, and a lot of the times. So, are there any like cheap, like sub $4,500 receivers, to sub 4K receivers that you would be okay with in a cash type lineup because you want to play Josh Allen plus Barkley plus Gibbs, and you're not playing like a Puka lineup, or you're playing Puka also, you're punting tight end, you're punting defense, and you need like a sub 4K wide receiver to go along with, a Shakir type of lineup. Is there anything that you'd feel comfortable with?
Lots, actually. Hollywood Brown, I think, would be my favorite. Just somebody that was getting more and more involved as the end of the season went on, and I kind of thought he'd have a more expensive price tag. But 7 and 8 targets in the last 2 games of the season for him. I like Hollywood quite a bit here at only 42. Zacchaeus, Demarcus Robinson, Diami Brown, John Mechie are all fine. I think like if you need to punt and you really like your lineup, maybe take out Demarcus Robinson. Maybe don't put him in that group. That's a more tournament only thing. But Mechie, Brown, Zacchaeus, and the other Brown, Hollywood, Diami, Mechie, and Zacchaeus. I think you don't change up your lineup if you land on one of them. I think you're totally cool with it.
Right. I would rank Hollywood number 1 out of the bunch.
Me
If I
too.
had
Yeah.
see, this is here. This may sound like different, like I'm saying 2 different things. If I'm paying, I want to pay up for volume. I want to pay down for ceiling when it comes to like cash games. So like if you're punting with like a 4K wide receiver, and you have to choose between a 4K wide receiver that is like, the fourth wide receiver that runs a 5-2 whatever and just catches a couple of like 8-yard passes versus, and maybe he gets 4 targets that way, or a guy that may not get many targets, but his targets may be like 70 yards down the field or something, or he could catch a 7-yard pass and run for 70 yards. Like, he's going to have a lot of games where he gets a 0, but he's also going to have a lot of games where he gets an 18. The other type of guy is a guy that like constantly gets like 3 for 24 and gives you like 5 points. Like at the lower price tags, I prefer, like if I'm going to punt, I think I'd rather play Hollywood over Mechie, because with KC being a bigger favorite, like Hollywood could go 4 for 80 with a touchdown. Like, I mean, like that could be a line. Mechie's much more likely to, with the Texans getting blown out, just like not get anything, just like sit there with 2 for 10 and nothing. And
So I agree, but what I would say is I think Mechie is second on that list behind Hollywood Brown. But I agree, Hollywood is number 1 there for sure.
That's if you're punting.
Yeah.
Tight end. We may not have money for tight end, but tight end pricing is pretty soft also. Do we just play, if we can, do we just play Kelsey at 5K?
Yeah, if we can, I think Kelsey's probably the top dog there. Andrews and Laporta, I think, are totally fine options, as is Ertz. Like, especially if you're going Jaden Daniels, like a nice little 4K Ertz fits. And I mean, like, I like Goddard too. Any of the top 5, I'm totally good with. Likely gets a downgrade for me now that Zay Flowers is going to be back. There are other options like a Noah Gray I like for a GPP, but I think any of the top 5 options I'm fine with from like a cash-ish optimal single entry perspective.
I think if you have to punt, I think Dalton Schultz at 3,300 is okay. I think I'd rather try to find some of the money to get up to a Goddard or an Ertz. I mean, or Laporta at 4,200. I mean, truthfully, I don't think that much separates. Like the difference between like from Goddard at 3,900 to even Kelsey at 5K. I think I'd rather have Kelsey. So like everything in the middle is like whatever's left for your cash lineup. I think that's perfectly fine.
You're not changing anything up if you have 3,900 remaining and you land on Goddard. Like, that's totally fine. I would say I wouldn't want to punt in like a cash game single entry perspective, probably. But if Dalton Schultz is going to be the only guy down there in that range that's picking up ownership, this is another thing we'll touch on more Friday. But Higbee and Noah Gray would be the two two routes I'd be looking to take there in tournaments as much lower owned pivots off of Dalton Schultz.
DST. Do we just, I mean, essentially, I mean, to me, you plug in whatever's left. I mean, at this point, I mean, the projection difference between a lot of these teams, if we take it just salary wise, is not big of a spread. It's like a 2-point spread between the Chiefs at 3,600 and the Commanders at 2,300. I think you're much more likely. I mean, truthfully, I think you're much more likely to just play the Commanders at 2,300 and be done with it. I mean, but if you said, "Oh, I want to," like the thing is that I'm not a big fan of playing defenses, DSTs against the Chiefs and against the Eagles either. Like, so it's like, oh, I have a little bit of money. I'm going to play the Texans or the Rams. I'm not necessarily sure that they really have as much upside as. I mean, it's not like the command. I mean, I don't know. What are you doing at I mean, obviously, I'd love to play the Chiefs against Stroud, but why am I why on a slate where I could just spend that 1,300 and move up, from Shakir to McLaurin, or from Schultz to Kelsey, or from Mahomes to Daniels, or from Mixon to Henry? Like, why am I sacrificing that at a defensive spot?
Yeah, exactly. You're choosing the cheap defense in that scenario 10 times out of 10. Now, I do think for like large field GPPs, which again, more of a Friday thing, if you can get up to the Chiefs and the Eagles and you like the way your stack looks anyways, that's beautiful. Those are to me by far the top two options. I would pick them over the Lions if I have the salary for sure. But if I'm trying to be optimal, like those Texans and Commanders, it's hard not to just go there. So like you said, if it makes a difference from Joe Mixon to Derrick Henry, I don't give a damn about who I'm playing in defense.
Because really on a 4-game slate, it's that defense is going to come down to who gets a pick 6 or something like that. I don't think the defensive score is going to matter all that much. But we'll talk about ceiling and GPP stuff on Friday. TJ, are you going to be back on Friday with me?
I believe that is me on Friday as well. Yes.
Okay, so we'll be doing the tier list.
No,
just all the stacks.
Blender and Bobby. I thought it was me before, but I think I was looking at last week. So no, I will not be back.
Okay, well then Bobby will be here doing it with me. But you're going to be on a whole tons of other stuff also, right? You're going to be on pre-lock shows. You're going to be on producing NBA shows. You're going to be on everything. So tell the people where they could find you this next coming week. We're not, although we're not. There's no Sunday. There's no People's Show. There's no like big 3-hour block on Sundays anymore, right?
No big 3-hour block anymore on Sundays. I'll give a quick opportunity to plug if that, just because there is so much good television and movies coming up over the next few months that on the Agents of Fandom podcast and YouTube channel, I'll be breaking that all down. So our next little bit, we're going to be covering Severance. We're going to be covering the new Spider-Man show. Going to be covering Daredevil, Andor, Captain America, new movies. So a lot of fun stuff going over there. And then on RotoGrinders, like you said, I'll be here all the time. I'm producing the Pick Six show tonight with Dean Daigle and Rich Rebar. Tomorrow I'll be on NBA Crunch Time. On Friday we'll be on the Blitz show together. And then I got the tournament takes at night. Saturday pre-lock with Tim. Sunday pre-lock with Britt. So we'll be here all the time.
All right, so hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Hit the notification bell to always know when TJ's going live, because TJ's always here on the YouTube channel, right? Subscribe if you're new here, and I'll be back tomorrow. Grant will be on with me. We'll be talking props and pick 'em. We'll be putting together a Prize Picks card, maybe an underdog card. Look at some normal sportsbook props, some SGPs, or anything that Grant is doing. The triple leg. Touchdown, parlay, boost, whatever. We'll see what's going on for the divisional round of the playoffs. We got tons of content here at RotoGrinders. Feel free to use SimLabs, use Lineup HQ, use everything as part of our combo premium package. NBA still going on. We still got we got one college football game left. We got college basketball. We got the
PGA
NHL.
Is in full force.
What?
PGA is in full force.
We got golf, we got MMA, we got everything. So sign up for Combo Premium Package. Click on that link in the description. You'll get $40 off your first month. So go do it. Come join us, and I'll see you tomorrow because I'm always here for you on weekdays, 11 o'clock Eastern, talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.